Hello, hello, this will be our commentary offered by Supermemo Wiki Gang. So in this episode I'm showing you my incremental reading in preparation for my exam. So it is very fast, like this is 1 hour and a half of incremental reading. And it will be very hard to catch it all. Basically, I'm starting out to do a physical examination, okay? So when you go to a doctor and he asks questions and stuff like that. So I have a lot of lists to remember, and as you can see, I learn lists by doing images. So Wozniak himself is quite against enumerations, like they do not make much sense unless you form a logical, a logical sequence of a list for a list. Here I'm doing a list of stuff that can kill you on work or just have you feel very bad. Just say it in a very bad English. So you can see like managerial work, doctor-like work, work that has to do with chemical stuff, and I don't know what I'm doing there. Okay, I'm just and like inhaling dust. And as I proceed, I have this template which I use, and that square disappears when I do show answers. This is called an image occlusion. And to do more images occlusion from one item, I just Alt D, and that lets you like use duplicate. Okay, so you duplicate, move the square, duplicate, move the square. So see how it's forming like a staircase structure on the right. Look at the knowledge tree. So now I'll be probably, oh, this is like how to recognize a face of someone who's sick. Okay, so you have to remember specific details, and again, they're not that logical bound one to each other. So I use images as a substitute for logic, you could say. If I try to learn a list without logic and without asking for stuff, like if I'm learning about heart and I want to know how and why all these diseases cause this heart sound when I go to listen to the heart in whatever way, the best way is to put images. I do both cover images, and sometimes I show them depending on my familiarity with the argument, like with the topic in question or subject, we could say, to as not to confuse terminology. Here I'm just like sourcing material from internet. As you can see, I use like titles basically to keep context, right? So that's the definition. I just copy pasted from Wikipedia and made a close. Here, yeah, like when I find something that I do not really know, what I do is simply import the definition of that, right? So like sclerodermia here is this pathology that affects old people, and I found it like, oh, this sign is caused by sclerodermia. And never take something for granted. If you see something you don't know, immediately import the definition, at least the definition for that. If you want to be like more thorough, just import the Wikipedia article, extract the definition, and dismiss the article. So you still have the reference material for that. You have to think of your knowledge like expanding as a spider web. Here you can see like my titles so that I know which level of knowledge I'm on. So the more general is H1, then you have like subtopics that are like H2. And yes, by the way, yeah, let's go back to that while I drink something in the speed reading. So it's very important to expand your knowledge as a spider web. So if you see that in some part your web doesn't have solid standing, you have to make one. So a definition or whatever. many times you will see that you don't actually know everything that it's in a sentence. You're basically giving something, taking something for granted, which you should never and never do. Like in this case, you can see how I also apply this rule with images. If I don't know something, here I'm just incrementally doing some repetitions. So I do some modifications. Here I'm probably wondering if this list is good enough. Yeah, I do a lot of editing. And a good rule of thumb is edit when you do something wrong. Like if you don't know the answer, just put in some edit. Maybe make it easier, right? Or just do the final drill. Like the final drill is the best way, even if the slowest, to see if something is actually rooted or not in your mind. Because if you manage to get it wrong like 5 times in a row in the final drill, the knowledge is not formulated well. You need to reformulate your knowledge. So again, we have lists here. Me going for a toilet break. And yeah, so I search for images that remind me of the concept. And many times when I recall the lists, the images help me a lot. Even though I've noticed that it's not always for the best, because I can forget images. Like images are also subject to forgetting. So I was thinking, and I will probably experiment with that in the future, to cover only the images sometimes, because it could actually be better to remember the images and then recall the images when you have to recall the whole list. So by the way, I put a box on every piece, and also at the end I put a huge box over everything. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing here, honestly. I'm just changing the list. Instead of using the non-logic one, I'm using a more logic structure so that it is easier to call it to mind. If you have a logic structure, it's not always necessary to use images. I only use images if they're strictly necessary, because the cost of using images is huge. It takes a lot, even 10 minutes, to do one good item with images. Depending obviously on how many images you need, how abstract they are. I use Whimsical to make this images lists and enumerations. I think it's a great tool. It's also free. The one before, the one with white boxes, was made with Lucidchart, which you have to pay for, sadly. But since I use it for like some work, it's not a big deal for me. I just recycle it. Here I want to create all items from this topic without extracting, because I'm right in the I'm straight in the middle of the biggest part of my studying for my exam. I don't want too many topics to clog my learning queue. So I'm asking like questions. As you can see, I'm splitting up the content. I'm changing the music because music is very important. And as you can see, like I copy paste something. Sometimes I delete it from the original file and I go through all the topic in one go. Is this a good practice? Not at all. Not at all. But if you're hard pressed for an exam, it's very effective. Instead of doing it incrementally, sometimes you can cheat a little bit. I would not recommend this. Like, it's a very bad practice. As you can see, by the way, I'm writing many of that stuff by hand. One last thing I would like to say is thank you for watching. Look for our next video and subscribe.